The big idea for this week is utilitarianism. It is far and away the most popular moral philosophy in the world today, if we are counting only those that do not require a God. You need to know what this idea is, why it's popular, and why it utterly fails as a final factor. Utilitarianism, first developed by Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill, holds that the psychological state of sentient beings is what matters morally. More specifically, the moral standard is pleasure, which includes fun, but also includes the absence of suffering, pain, and stress. A world with more pleasure and less suffering is a better world. If we are morally obligated to be of benefit to humankind, then we are morally obligated to do whatever it takes to make this a world with more pleasure and less suffering. Utilitarians use two different terms as shorthand for this obligation. First, they sometimes say that we're obligated to maximize happiness. We're going to avoid this use of the term happiness, however, in order to avoid confusion. There's nothing wrong with it, but there is, going back to Aristotle, a more robust concept of happiness that involves more than psychological states. And this concept will be prominent later in the course. Second, they alternatively say that we're obligated to maximize utility. This is why they are called utilitarians. And this is the term we shall use for maximizing pleasure and minimizing pain. Utilitarianism is an easy sell. First, you don't have to convince anybody that pleasure is awesome, especially if you can make it last. Second, if I agree that pleasure is good for me, then wouldn't it be good for everyone? Third, there's something predictable and real and measurable about influencing psychological states. It seems at least potentially scientific. And fourth, it treats us all the same. Every being that can feel joy or that can suffer is in some sense equally important, regardless of sex, race, or even species. And so it establishes wide ethical boundaries and can be a powerful force for social reform. It appears to be the theory for moderns, non-discriminatory, scientific, and easy to love. What could go wrong? What could go wrong is the same thing that has gone wrong with every other factor. Philosophers have taken a really good idea and have tried to make it do everything. First, let's look at perhaps its biggest attraction, impartiality or lack of discrimination. Suppose I put all of my efforts into helping the homeless, with the result that many people find homes and an improved quality of life. But at the same time, my own child is neglected and becomes homeless. Surely the world is now a better world. At least it's a world with greater overall utility because of my impartial behavior. But just as surely, I'm ethically flawed. In some cases, the circle of community is more important than the circle of all mankind. Loyalty also matters. Yes, we can agree that we all should have equal rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But this impartiality is my ideal for how the state should function, not for how I should personally conduct my affairs. I can value all members of humankind without having exactly the same obligations towards all of them. Second, consider the problem of justice. If I live in poverty because it's my chosen lifestyle, and you live in poverty because you were robbed, there's a moral difference that is not captured by the concept of pleasure. When people suffer undeserved harm, when they suffer injustice, the moral wrong is not merely because it's suffering, but also because it's undeserved. Third, consider the varieties of pleasures. Pleasure that is derived from the misfortunes of others, or from torturing the helpless, or from voyeurism, cannot count in the plus column for making this a better world. Pleasure in creepy contexts is wrong, but not because it's outweighed by whatever pain it might also cause. It's wrong in those cases because it is pleasure. Fourth, consider personal responsibility. Suppose I harmed someone on the grounds that, on the whole, it would be a better world if I did so. This is one of the elements of the famous trolley problem. If I'm on a bridge and I see that the trolley below will kill 5 stranded people when it turns the corner, should I give a push to the very large man who is leaning precariously over the railing beside me? It would kill him, but it would stop the trolley. If I act quickly and succeed in saving the 5 by sacrificing only the 1, then according to utilitarianism, I've carried out my moral obligations. Maybe so. But if I'm a morally sensitive person, I will be tortured by that action for the rest of my life. But wouldn't I be morally wrong to feel that torture, since it adds to the suffering in the world? Utilitarianism would dictate this. But part of what it is to care about being a useful member of humankind is to care not only about the big picture, but also to care about how I personally treat individual members. So something is missing from this picture. Suffering can also be valuable. Utilitarians will sometimes say, of course, you have to use your common sense and factor these other things in. But that means that they're not real utilitarians. That pleasure is for them only one of the important factors. So if they are absolutists, they must then identify the final factor that helps them figure out how to reject injustice, disloyalty, sinister delights, and callousness. Or they can become pluralists, abandoning wishful formulas in favor of the recognition that we have many sources of insight for how to live useful lives as members of humankind. Utility indeed is one important insight, but only one of several. And that is our big idea for week 5.